If you have worked with patients for any amount of time, you know that their primary complaints are going to be sleep, energy, gut, immune, all of the things. But what if all of those things, memory, digestive health, immune, sleep, stress, anxiety, cognition, what if all of those were connected? What if all of those symptoms you could tie together, wrap up with a bow, and give one product that would address all of those? What if there was such a thing? Well, there is. I'm going to talk about it today on the podcast. Well, hello. Welcome back. As promised from last week, I have a very special guest that is joining me today. And as you know, it is none other than the infamous Lee Carroll, the genius in the room. I have known Lee for, probably close to 20 years, maybe 15 years. And he has always been a leader. He's been inspirational. He's a teacher, a friend. I have so much respect and regard for him. And he is joining me today. I'm going to let you listen into our conversation here in a second. And we are talking about a couple of new products from Real Mushrooms that are going to be game changers for your perimenopause and menopausal patients. So let me introduce you to Lee Carroll. If you're new to my world and you don't know who this is, he is soon to be one of your favorites. So let's open the door. We're going to peek in and I'll let you listen to my conversation with Lee Carroll. Well, hey, Lee, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a while since you've been on with me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back, Rhonda. I'm really excited. Yeah, it's good
Of
to see you
course.
again.
It's so nice. Lee and I go back a long way, like long way back in the standard process days and teaching and seminars and all the things together. So it's always nice feels like a little bit of home for me when you get to come
Yeah,
on and we get to chat. So
me too.
today we are talking about some cool new things that are going on with Real Mushrooms. And so why don't you, before we start and dive in, tell everybody a little bit more about like your role, where you came from for people who don't know you, and now what your work is with Real Mushrooms and how you got into the whole mushroom thing. I love
Yeah.
this story.
Well, there are 35 years now that I've been in the natural products industry, 30 of those years with MediHerb. I've done all the different jobs. I started off as production manager and ended up being educator, Kerry Bones' right-hand man for all those years. That was really good training. COVID happened. I changed gears. It was time to move on. And I was working with Justin Toll at Aduco and Third Planet. And I got the brief to design some mushroom products. That got me interested in mushrooms. I'm like, gee, all 30 years, I didn't know anything about mushrooms. And then I met RoNe&x, Jeff Chilton. And then I'm like, oh my God, this mushroom thing is really fascinating. It's just like
Yeah.
herbs all over again, quality issues. So when COVID happened, everything fell apart, and I'm like, hell, what am I going to do? Like, how do I earn any money? So I started focusing on just becoming a mushroom expert. I developed an online course. I started promoting that. Making a living from online courses is not what I would recommend anybody do.
Rough. Yeah.
It's a tough gig. I started, like just putting my feelers out and doing things, and I met the people at RoNe&x. Again, I met the people at Real Mushrooms, and we had a courtship over the internet, and we had meetings, and I did various kind of educational events that they were interested in. We met at the Psychedelic Science Conference in 23 with Jeff and his son Adam. Adam's the head of brand at Real Mushrooms. Had a fantastic week. It was fantastic. Great. We hung out all day, every day, great discussions. And then at the end of that, Jeff was like, well, you're a really cool guy. We should get you on board. So I started with Real Mushrooms in early 24, and my current role is Chief Medical Herbalist. So I'm across all aspects of it. I'm like the Swiss Army knife of the companies when I go and work there. So I'm doing practitioner education. I'm developing
Yeah.
products. I sit on the R&D meetings and help marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm having, like, in the twilight of my career, I'm feeling like I'm really, doing really well. I'm firing on all cylinders. The engagement is still there. Mushrooms are just so fascinating
Yeah.
as a topic. It's endlessly kind of interesting and exciting.
And to your point, it's something that those of us that have been in the standard process and Mediherb world, like we didn't really know anything about them, and they are just equally as fascinating.
Yeah.
And I love the early work that you did when I remember us having a conversation and you said how soulfully and deeply disappointed you were to learn about the alterations and the substitutions that were happening in the mushroom market and how people were being sold mushroom products that were not up to par. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's a big topic and millions of people are being fooled every day. So mushrooms are hard to understand. They're only recently removed from the plant kingdom in the 60s. So we still think of mushrooms as if they're plants. We don't have a separate category in the food pyramid, for example. So companies come along and they make products based on how cheap and effective it is to make them. They introduce novel ideas. So with mushrooms in general, a fungal organism that we call a mushroom is mycelium, the part that we never see. It's in the dead decaying matter or the substrate that it grows in. And that's the main organism. So it's very hard to define. It's this nebulous kind of
Yeah.
thread-like thing. So when conditions are right, it produces a mushroom, a fruiting body if you're using compliance language. And you and I both appreciate and know that it's the chemistry of the natural products that drives their
Mhm.
therapeutic effect. If you don't honor the chemistry, what's orange juice if you don't have orange juice in the juice, It's
Yeah,
just water.
exactly.
So it doesn't have the benefit. So when you look at the products that get sold, the mushroom or the fruiting body is where all of the traditional knowledge is. They've got thousands of years of history of people eating that, extracting it, doing it, and we know that that works. There's a more recent discovery that, hey, the mycelium, which was inaccessible previously because the techniques weren't available, when you purify the mycelium, when you grow it in a liquid tank, it's got some unique properties as well. The chemistry is quite different. In that, some aspects it's similar, but in many ways it's very different. So then the mycelium fermented grain industry comes along, and companies like Host Defense and Mushrooms, kind of Aloha Botanicals, kind of lead the way with this, where they're like, hey, let's grow that mycelium in brown rice or oats, and then we'll sell it as if it's a mushroom. So the problem with that is that, yes, mycelium is okay, but the mycelium doesn't transfer the same health benefits as the
Right.
as the mushroom.
The
So
mushroom. Yeah.
you can't make that same claim. So all of the evidence that is being developed all points to those products having some minor kind of immunological health benefits, but none of the main stuff like, lion's mane is noted, as we're going to talk about, for, cognitive function. There's chemistry in there that does that. So when you analyze those products like I have, what you find out is that there's only about 10 to 15% at the best of mycelium in that brown rice thing or that oats thing. So the chemistry is not there. You can't identify the active constituent. So all of the packaging, all of the labeling identifies that product as a mushroom. When you turn the product over and read the supplement facts,
Mhm.
it tells you that it's a mycelium fermented biomass. People are basically, being baited and switched into a product. And when we talk about lion's mane, those products occupy the lion's share of the market. People will, this is my fear and where you and I interact on this topic, when quality's poor and people expect a benefit from the thing that they take, if they don't get that benefit, they'll give up on it.
Right.
You can't be tricked all the time forever. So my fear is that people will say, "Oh, I did lion's mane for years.
It didn't work.
Initially I got some benefit, but then it didn't work. So I
Mhm.
not just give up on lion's mane, I'll give
Mhm.
up on mushrooms in general." So they're not trialing the right thing, and it's hard to get these quality messages across. That's why, you have a skill and a preference for working with practitioners, because it's hard to disseminate complex information. So we have to filter it down so the practitioners get the training to deliver those
Right.
messages to their
Right.
client.
Right.
Choose the right products.
And the same thing I think happens, well, we know it happens with the herbal market. You know, how many people have said, "Oh, I tried ashwagandha and it didn't work." And I say, "Well, what kind of ashwagandha are you using? You know, where did you
Yeah.
get it? How has it been tested? How do you know how much is in there? You know, blah blah blah." We ask those questions. It's the same idea. And it's unfortunate in the herbal, medicinal mushrooms, supplement industry, wellness, health, whatever you want to call it, industry. It's an industry and they're there to make money. They're not necessarily there, not everyone, to really deliver the goods to the patient, the
Yeah,
end
and that
result to the
kind of
patient.
history just keeps on repeating itself.
Yeah, it does. So let's talk about Real Mushrooms has you've got a couple of new products that are coming out, and when I was sent the information about this, I was so excited because I have to say first, I love the simplicity of the product. It makes it very, very easy to talk to a patient about, but these are super unique products. So I'm going to let you talk about both of them, and then I have a big list of questions for you. So I'll let you start. There's two products. So go ahead.
Yeah. So there's two products. We've got Lion's Mane Calm, Lion's Mane Focus, and they're both designed around concentrated lion's mane extracts. So the Focus product contains the equivalent of 3.3 grams of dried lion's mane mushroom, and that meets all of the evidence hurdles for all of the cognitive clinical trial work that's been done on lion's mane that we can talk about. So the product focus is pitched at like all of the benefits that you would expect to get from lion's mane. So cognition, gut health, peripheral nerve health, etc. And I've combined it in this formula with Genius Pure Alpha GPC, which is a highly bioavailable form of choline. And in the US, there's a nutritional gap in choline. People don't get enough. I designed this product as an everyday product. It's got enough choline in there to fill that nutritional gap. So the idea is that people take it long term. I believe that lion's mane is a brain nutrient. It's a gut prebiotic. It's a food, and when we eat mushrooms regularly, we do better. So lion's mane is that intersection of functional food and functional mushroom where you're getting all of the things that you need. So it's kind of like it is the true essence of what a dietary supplement should be. We're giving people what their bodies crave in this modern world, where there's all of these extra demands, et cetera. And then I've balanced it out with a little bit of cordyceps for, vitality. The Calm product has got a little bit less lion's mane. It's 2.15 grams of dried mushroom equivalent, and that allows it to meet the evidence hurdle for the perimenopause and the menopausal studies that have been done to show that lion's mane supports women going through that natural change to be less irritable, to be less moody, to perhaps sleep a little bit better and have a calmer nervous system. And I've paired it with the green tea amino acid called L-theanine. And L-theanine is very well studied. We're using alpha wave L-theanine, which has got clinical trial data on it, which makes it quite unique. And L-theanine is an amazing amino acid which supports a calm and alert state. So it improves sleep quality, helps decrease stress responses. And I've paired it with a little bit of with reishi for the balance that reishi gives and the sleep support. So I'm pretty excited. These will be a great addition to practitioners' toolboxes for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about where we would use them clinically. This was what was fascinating to me when I was looking through the information and looking at what the ingredients were, is I loved that it was for that perimenopause, menopausal state. I suppose it is good for anybody. I mean, we could certainly use it across the board, but it is such a big complaint in this population of women is that the memory, the aging, they start to get that little bit of cognitive decline. And their biggest fear is always, do I have Alzheimer's?
Yes.
Am I losing my mind? I can't go anywhere without a notepad. I have to write everything down. So clinically, what would you expect to see in using these products with this type of woman, of patient in that 40 to 60, 70 range?
Yeah, great question. So these products are suitable for a broad range of people. This particular category that we're talking about is highly relevant for these products. So the Focus product is designed for long-term use. The research tells us that you need to take lion's mane for about 8 weeks to see the full benefits kick in, and then continue it for the long course. With the choline in there, as I said, that addresses the nutritional gap. So it's not like we're targeting any kind of clinical trial work, but there is a clinical trial on choline at 315 milligrams. This product's got 200 milligrams of this Genius Pure Alpha GPC. A single dose at 300 grams was demonstrated to support and improve cognitive function.
Oh, nice.
So this Focus product for the perimenopausal, menopausal woman that's having issues, with concentration, with brain fog. So in that state, there's less estrogen. The hippocampus, which is the main site for memory formation, is replete with estrogen receptors. So when ambient estrogen receptors, androgen estrogen levels drop a little bit, the hippocampus just doesn't work as well as it should. So the combination of lion's mane and choline together, I think, is very significant in supporting the way that the memory processes work in the brain. And lion's mane's got beta-glucans, it's got ergothioneine, it's got hericenones. And choline is the main source of raw material for acetylcholine, for example. And for its metabolite, betaine, is a main contributor to methylation processes, et cetera. So this product, the Focus product, women that are experiencing that brain fog over a period from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks would notice that fog kind of lifting a little bit, and that they would begin to notice that things are changing for the better. I think an underrated aspect of the health of this type of patient is the gut, and the microbial environment in the gut is a very significant player in the production of metabolites that interact with the brain. So I think lion's mane is kind of like a targeted prebiotic where it
Mhm.
preferentially upregulates certain bacteria. We don't know which ones yet, but there's hints towards this in the research. And then those bacteria produce short chain fatty acids.
Right.
They might metabolize phytoestrogens from the diet. Like, there's a lot of controversy about soy, but a non-GMO fermented soy like tempeh is delivering diadzine into the gut, which gets
Yep.
converted to equol, and then equol is able to interact with estrogen receptors in a positive way to
Right.
ameliorate those benefits. So the gut aspect of lion's mane is kind of underrated in this whole process because we don't know a huge amount about it. So the other side of the equation then is that, some of these women just don't sleep well either. And
Right.
they're just, it's not, the brain fog might not be an issue, but sleep and irritability, and they might be a bit moody. It's
Yeah.
the other product, the calm product in this category, a little bit less lion's mane, still doing all that same stuff. We're meeting that evidence hurdle for that particular benefit. But the L-theanine is a really unique amino acid which interacts with GABA receptors. It modulates GABA behavior. It's neuromodulatory at dopamine and serotonin levels. There's one other thing that I just went blank on in terms of what that does. It potentially antagonizes glutamate. So when
Oh,
there's too much glutamate, that can create an excitatory state in the
right.
brain, which
Right.
becomes neuroinflammatory. So L-theanine is thought to be a bit antagonistic at the glutamine receptor sites so that it can kind of calm things down a little bit. So L-theanine's got great research on producing a calm alertness, just like meditation. And just like meditation, you can do a single bout of meditation and feel great afterwards. But if you did it every day for a month, you'd feel fantastic every day.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
L-theanine is a bit like that. People will notice it within an hour. Some people will. The research tells us that. But many people will palpably notice the difference after 4 weeks. And then when they continue it, it only ever gets better. So it improves sleep onset. It improves the quality of deep sleep. It reduces the stress response. There's been reductions in the levels of salivary cortisol, for example. It lowers heart rate. It
Nice.
lowers blood pressure. And
Yeah.
2 capsules of this product delivers the clinically relevant dose of L-theanine. So that's 200 milligrams. But in the research, you can get up to 400 milligrams with really good evidence. So from a practitioner point of view, the range is kind of 2 to 4 with this product.
Mhm.
And with the Focus product, from a practitioner point of view, it's two capsules a day long term is probably good enough. But if you wanted to turn the dial a bit more quickly in the first 4 to 8 weeks, you could do 3. You could even do 4 capsules. Lion's mane's a food. You can't have too much of it. If you go to
Exactly.
a restaurant and order the lion's mane steak because you've seen how good that can be, you're eating 100
Yeah.
grams. We don't have to be worried about overdoing it.
Yeah. Are there so that in the 2 products, are both of them designed to support that woman in that perimenopause, menopause state, menopause,
Yes,
or
they
are
are.
they distinctly separate? Okay, so if they're both working together, talk about the other one a little bit. And then my question, I guess, is that I want to get to after that is, would there be reason to use both? Would there be a reason not to use both? Like, what would be the circumstance when you would choose one or the other or both?
Yeah, good question. I guess economics plays a role. How much
Yeah.
is enough?
Yeah.
So these products together can be combined. Focus, my creation around it was, people from 30 onwards, probably ideally from 45 or 50 onwards that just wanted to make sure that their brain was working well as they aged. That's kind of like the target kind of group. But, we're carving out this little segment, which is quite specific. And then with the calm, it's the same deal. Like many people in the world, just need calming. there's
Yeah.
there's a shortage of that, right?
Yeah.
So it targets this particular category quite nicely. You could combine both of these together quite effortlessly if if the practitioner wanted to do that. But the legacy line's main products that Real Mushrooms has, you could combine them with those as well, which would give you, because the legacy product contains all of the mushroom. It's not a concentrated extract, so it's got all of the fibrous material, which is very finely ground into a very fine powder, which is very highly and significantly prebiotic. So the
Yeah.
legacy product gives a bit more gut support, than these products perhaps. But it's hard to give any rules around this. Often, cognition will be a big complaint, or it'll be irritability, and sleep will be the big complaint. If they occur together, sure, you can use both together. But because lion's mane's in both of them, you could mix and match them. You could start off with cognition
Yeah.
for 8 weeks, and then you could, if that's kind of like, oh wow, my brain's working better, but I'm a little bit irritable. You could then switch to the calm product.
So, really, an easy way to distinguish between the two, besides the name, would be that one is more for focus, obviously, brain, mental awareness, acuteness, memory, all of that, plus
Cognition.
the cognition. And then the incidental side benefit would be gut health, etc. But then the other one would be really, you would think about irritability and sleep. And all of those things are all things that women, I would probably even go so far to say that it's not just to perimenopause, menopause. I don't want to pigeonhole these products into only that age range. But you look at women in their 30s. Now the whole big new thing is to talk about everybody's in perimenopause.
Yeah.
All the young women are in perimenopause, and they put them in the perimenopause group so that they can give them bioidentical hormones. I recorded a podcast not long ago about this, and I just said, this is so wrong. They're not in perimenopause. They're tired. They're stressed out. They're picking food off their kids' lunches. They're not taking good care of themselves. Their memory is going, and they're showing up with all of this long list of symptoms, and their primary care providers are like, oh, you're in perimenopause.
Yeah.
So I think I can see a real value in using these products with that age group of woman, that 30-ish into the mid 40-ish world.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could even go younger. There's a clinical trial in adolescent men, boys, with L-theanine, and that had ADHD, and they performed better, slept better, had better control, over their, their mental state when they had L-theanine. So yeah, you're right. It's useful across all of those categories for
All
sure.
right, quick pause to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Real Mushrooms. Listen, if you're listening to this and you're already thinking of patients that have brain fog, poor focus, irritability, or sleep issues, I want you to know they just released 2 brand new formulas, Lion's Mane Focus and Lion's Mane Calm. Focus is the one to think about for cognition, memory, brain fog, but Calm is the one you want to think about for irritability, stress response, and sleep support. And yes, both of them are especially relevant for perimenopausal and menopausal women, but they're not limited to that population. If you want to try them in practice, Real Mushrooms has a special offer for you since you're listening. All you have to do is place a $150 order, use my name as your referral, and they will send you a free bottle of both products. I will put all the details in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the interview. Is there anyone that would not benefit from this? Clinically, what do we need to watch for when giving this? Are there
There's no
anything we need to stay away from?
contraindications, so you couldn't get it wrong. If someone didn't need calming, for example, they slept well, their stress response was good,
Sorry. Right.
so there's no downside to giving that person L-theanine. It probably it has, the effects won't be as palpable, but like at the basement layers of how those processes work in the brain, they'll just be more efficient and more capable.
So there wouldn't be anybody that we would need to say, probably not a good fit for you. What can we, when practitioners are talking about this with the patient, are there any key, like what you would say, key talking points? Maybe it is just the obvious, but there's always the cost issue, the economic issue when we're dealing with the patient. What can they afford? And how do we fit yet another thing into a protocol? That's how my brain is thinking. I'm like, okay, I get this and I love this. I love Real Mushrooms. I love the products.
Yeah.
How is it that what would we trade? That's a better way to ask it. What would we trade? I mean, and my world. I know your world. Like, what kinds of things that we're using. clinically, what we were always trained on,
Yeah.
what would we trade off?
Good. Very good question, Rhonda. I've got an equally good answer.
I'm ready.
So humans are evolutionarily programmed or designed, or however you want to think about it, to need mushrooms on a regular basis. Humans in balance are less healthy when we don't consume mushrooms. And there's a very long list of epidemiological associations that demonstrate that, across all of the health categories. So we need to get mushrooms back on the plate, back in the diet. The more, the better. So a product like this, say, let's just take the calm, for example, would be, look, you need to have a mushroom in your life and you clearly need a bit of support to calm yourself down, make yourself more alert, have better control of your stress response and sleep a little bit more deeply. So
Mhm.
we can do it all in the one go with green tea, alpha wave L-theanine and the lion's mane together. It's kind of like a natural partnership. So in that
Yeah.
situation, what would go if they're taking another lion's mane product or they've got another mushroom that they're taking? I'd replace it with this one.
Mhm.
This is kind of highly relevant in that situation. And then it's the same story with the focus product. We need mushrooms on a regular basis. We need choline, and the evidence tells us that there's a significant nutritional gap, particularly in women in the US. There's dietary preferences where people don't eat eggs or organ meats. Who eats organ meats anymore?
Yeah,
I
I
like
know,
chicken
right?
liver pate, but that's about as far as I go. And the body needs that stuff. So where does it come from? So many of the choline products in the market just don't have adequate bioavailability, and you need to take huge doses of them to get
Yeah.
the equivalent of eating an egg yolk, for example, or eating a few chicken livers. So this highly bioavailable form that we're using, the Genius Pure Alpha GPC, when it's combined with lion's mane, it makes it like a dietary supplement that is catering for the fact that our body's got all of these nutritional needs, but in a modern world, we don't always meet them, and we don't even understand them to know that we have to meet them. So this product becomes a daily kind of regimen to just keep a healthy brain and healthy cognitive function. So what needs to go? One of the other things that's just not as relevant to your long-term health.
And I think there's so many patients that, at least for me, I think I use a lot of adaptogens because that stress response is so altered in so many people.
Yeah.
And you just give them something that helps, allows them to kind of adapt to life, to circumstance. It puts the body in a better state. Although these mushrooms are not adaptogens, it seems to me that there is some overlap there.
Oh, it's totally. Yeah, we don't fully just understand what's going on with mushrooms yet. But when you do them regularly, as I have been doing now for the last 6 years nearly, uh, me personally, my health has improved immeasurably. And the only thing I've done different is take out the echinacea that I used to use every day. And I now take mushrooms every day. And, I'm
Mm.
doing, like I practice what I preach. I do a whole bunch of them every day. I take 5 defenders. I do lion's mane. I do tremella, et cetera, et cetera. So they're a missing link in our health. I see the same in my patients. They just do better. Their immune systems become much more robust. So we haven't even talked about the immune side of things. Lion's mane does get pigeonholed as the cognitive mushroom. All of its history is gastrointestinal tract stuff, inflammatory bowel diseases and dyspepsia
Really?
and all sorts of
Yeah.
dysbiotic like type conditions. That's where it was
Yeah.
used primarily in clinic. The cognitive stuff's relatively new. It was only discovered in the 90s. So that aspect of it is like, wow, that's really unique. Like there's a good traditional connection between the gut and the brain. But researchers, when they look at the immunological activity of lion's mane, it's right up there with all the other ones. It's equally as good in terms of improving how the immune system works. So making the immune system more vigilant, making it more
Yeah.
capable to mount the right, kind of defenses. And then lion's mane's really high in ergothioneine, my new favorite
I
molecule,
love it.
which which is the key reason why we need to eat mushrooms. Our ergothioneine, I think it should be labeled as a vitamin. Our bodies are designed to bring it in. There isn't any other nutrient in that class of molecule that's got its own dedicated transporter molecule protein to bring it into the body. And then all of our cellular machinery is set up, designed, if you like, to use it.
Yeah.
So when we have low ergothioneine, everything goes downhill when we get older. It really is a longevity vitamin. And Lion's mane is one of the highest accessible mushrooms from a dietary point of view. There are mushrooms that are higher, like golden oyster or porcini, but of the regular kind of garden variety ones that we have access to, it's really high. So lion's mane is a number one pick. If you're going to pick a mushroom that you're going to stick with, it's the one to choose.
Interesting. So then putting together, I'm just thinking through a clinical lens, like putting it together. If you're putting a protocol together, everybody's going to need stress support, immune support could be thrown in there for sure. And then you've got gut health. That's always in there because there's someone's
Yeah.
bloated, somebody's got some GI issue. Would you look at either of these products with the lion's mane in them as being a single one-stop shop?
Almost. So all of those categories that you just ticked off, including the immune system, lion's mane really does that job well. So it deserves a seat like in the foundational type protocols that practitioners like to work with. So
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of how those get divided up, we've got to make sure that all of the micro and macronutrients are there. There's certain herbal things that are foundational for modern health. It might be curcumin, or it might be echinacea, or it might be the ashwagandha that we were talking about earlier, or
Yeah.
rhodiola. Everybody should have an adaptogen. That's
Right.
that's a good philosophy to have. So everybody should have a mushroom. Lion's mane is a good choice to fit into that. Some people might do better with reishi. Some people might do better with tremella or chaga, but it should be a mushroom. And lion's mane is kind of right up there in the top couple of mushrooms that I would choose for everyday consumption in that foundational protocol category.
Yeah, I think the takeaway there is I love that you pointed that out. The takeaway is that, we're thinking about food-based things, whether it's standard process or another company, we're thinking about herbs, we're thinking about adapters, we're thinking about all that. But I think we often forget that if we're going to take this approach and we're going to say a mushroom needs to be there, maybe that's the clinical reframe that we need to begin using, is that no matter what your protocol looks like, a mushroom needs to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we look at it from that perspective, then either one of these products would be great because they're so high in the lion's mane. So depending on which side of the equation, you're looking at memory, cognition, et cetera, or you're looking at calm, focus, and sleep stability.
Exactly. Yeah. Spot on. And do you know who the first person was to come up with this idea in
No,
in the in the US kind of, centric view of the world?
yeah. Who? No. About mushrooms?
Yeah, he put mushrooms in Catalan when no one even knew about a mushroom.
You know what? You're so right. I
Yeah, I
never
wrote
thought
a
of
blog about it. I went through the whole history of the development. I think he was observing the early research on ergothioneine. I couldn't get anybody at SP interested. I thought it was a good story for them. I'm kind of advancing that narrative.
Yeah.
Standard process is a bit stuck in the past. They're
Yeah.
very slow
Agreed.
to pick up on new and novel things. So I'm pitching that idea like actively. It's ironic, hey, that genius of a man, like before anybody knew anything about mushrooms, he's like, I'm going to put them in Catalan. Like, how do you ever come up with that idea? Like,
That is wild. I never put that two and two together, I guess,
yeah, and
because
that's,
we just
I think it's
think
the
about mushrooms, right?
ergothioneine that he was onto, not just
And
the
what makes you
mushroom
think
itself.
that? What makes you think
Because
that?
ergothioneine was discovered in 1909, and in the 20s in France, it was being actively researched as an antioxidant. They found it in the blood of animals, and there was quite a flurry of research around it. And that was when he was really active at his kind of height of his genius, where he
Mhm.
was just voracious in, sucking up any bit of arcane information that kind of came his way. It's easy for us these days. We just bloody open up our computer and the world's
Exactly.
our oyster. But back then you had to work really hard to get information. There
Yeah.
weren't any fax machines then even. So I think he was reading that research, and I think he intuitively drew the dots together. And I'm not putting myself in the same league of that great man, but I have hunches all the time. You play them out in clinic. Oh, I think you need this. I think you need that. So you kind of
Mhm.
fine tune the way that creative process works. And
Right, right.
my hunch is very, very overwhelmingly strong around ergothioneine being, a key ingredient in human health. And this is why lion's mane is so important because, the average dried lion's mane has got about 1.5 milligrams per dry gram of mushroom.
Wow.
To meet the nutritional deficiency gap, you need 3 or 4 milligrams a day. to be healthy, we don't know what the number is. I'm using up to 60 milligrams in clinic, but just having a serving of lion's mane every day is enough to overcome the weaknesses and the deficiencies that happen when you don't have any. That's a different podcast, but it
Yeah.
lines up really well with the
Yeah.
idea that lion's mane, you've got to be having lion's mane every day to optimize your health.
So would there be, you said obviously we can't take too many. I mean, we're going to, it becomes an
You'll get
economic
a gut ache
factor
if you take
at
too
that
many,
point.
but you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that if you had someone that needed a little bit more, it's like I always call it the 911 approach, they're acute, they're not sleeping, or they are like she's panicking because she's just positive she's got dementia. What would be an upper level reasonable dose that you might want to do acutely for
Yeah,
maybe
well,
4
these
weeks?
things don't
Okay.
work acutely. So
Okay, that's my
four
question.
four capsules a day is probably all you need.
Okay.
And you just have to be patient. If you're worried about getting Alzheimer's or having, your brain explode on you, it doesn't happen quickly.
Yeah,
It
right.
happens slowly. So just
Yeah.
calm down. Have some of this calm product
Yeah, yeah.
while we're solving the long-term problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And then with the calm product, I think the same thing goes. More is not always better. And as you escalate the dose of L-theanine, you don't get increasing benefits in return. So I think 4 capsules of that is kind of a reasonable upper limit for a practitioner to play with. Maybe if people muscle test and do all sorts of intuitive things, then as long as you don't go crazy, I think 2 to 4 is a good range to be in. And if you need more of something, maybe it's something else you need. Like theanine goes well with kava, for example. It
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
well with ashwagandha. So, rather than just pushing the one thing, maybe there's
The balance.
other
And
choices
then
that could be added.
could you use like the focus in the morning and the calm at night? 2 in the morning, 1,
Yeah,
2
well,
in the
it's got the name Focus, but Focus is not fast acting. So
Mm,
if it helps the patient's compliance and it helps them understand why they take it and gets them doing it long term, by all means, yeah. 2 Focus in the morning and 2 Calm in the night. I have got no problem with that.
and they're still getting the lion's mane at the end of the day, whether they're
Yeah,
getting the product A or product B. They're still getting the lion's mane at the end of the day, and they're
and
getting a
more
nice
lion's
broad
mane
range. Yeah,
in terms of those products is not an issue.
yeah, yeah.
And clinical trials are all about how low can we go before we don't get any effect? It's not the other way.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
the lion's mane clinical trial started off at 5 grams. The monks that were eating it originally were probably, eating, 10, 20, 30 grams. That was the gastrointestinal dose. So then researchers are like, well, does 5 works? Does 3 work? Does 3 works? Does 2 work? Well, like, where's the cutoff? So lion's mane's a food. You can eat as much of it as you like, based on how healthy your digestive system is. But,
Right.
between 3 and 5 grams a day is a jolly good and efficacious dose. But it takes
That's
time. Lion's mane is not the quick fix. It's not the stimulant. And L-theanine is calming, but it's not sedating. So you'll have a good night's sleep, but you wake up in the morning, you'll be fresh and
feel
bright as
good.
a bunny, ready to go and tackle the day. You won't be like, oh, I want to go back to bed because I'm really tired. It doesn't have that kind of sedating effect that some other options might.
Right. Well, cannot wait to start using these. I cannot wait. I'm so excited to start using this. I just feel like a kid in the candy shop. I'm like ready to go. So I am so glad you came on the podcast, and how I will talk about in a minute. So if you're listening, stay tuned. I'm going to give you all the details in just a second about how to get your hands on these products. So Lee, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate you.
My pleasure. Yeah, I've had fun. Thanks for having me, Rhonda. It's been great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
See you.
Okay. Wasn't that awesome? Lee is one of my favorite people to have on the podcast. I always love chatting with him. I learned so much. In fact, truth be told, after we were finished recording this, we chatted on for a long, long time about so many good, cool things and a research paper and all kinds of things. So I love learning from him. I'm sure that you did too. So here's how you can get your Real Mushroom products. If you sign up, even if you have an account with them, are offering, if you place a $150 order, you can, if you drop my name, this is when you want to be a name dropper. Drop my name when you place the order as the referral person. And that way they know that you're coming from the podcast, which is great for their marketing, right? But let them know that you heard about it from me, and they will give you a gift of both the Calm and the Focus. You'll get a free bottle of each. So be sure you do that. That is well worth it. Also, in the show notes, I have listed Lee Carroll's website. I highly recommend that you go there. It's Lee Carroll Herbalist, LeeCarroll herbalist.com. And there you can read about that blog that he was talking about, Royal Lee, and about putting mushrooms in those. So be sure that you go check that out. He also has his mushroom course on there, which is phenomenal. It is amazing. If you want to learn more about mushrooms, he really, really is a wealth of information. Highly, highly recommend it. So thanks for listening today. Don't forget, place your order with Real Mushrooms. So you can go to realmushrooms.com. And when you place your order, whether it's a new order, you're new to them, or if you have an existing account, just a $150 order, drop my name, and you'll get a free bottle of Calm and Focus with your order. All right, my friends, take care. Have an amazing week. I'll see you soon.